Hey, this is the C&D channel. I'm Chris. This is MMA for you. I'm going to be doing my prediction for UFC 178, Johnson versus Cariaso, which happens on September 27th. Overall, this is one of the strongest cards so far of the year, just on paper. Even your Fight Pass prelims, Kevin Lee versus Jon Tuck, two prospects. I'm actually pretty high on Kevin Lee. And Gamburyan versus Gibson, not a bad matchup by any stretch. I mean, those are just prelims for this card. Those could easily be like Fox Sports 1 prelims or something like that, you know? Gamburyan's been with the organization for a while. Cody Gibson, not a bad prospect himself. On the regular prelim, on the main card, the fight to top off the prelims is Dominick Cruz versus Mizugaki, but they already have another strong fight in there that's divisionally relevant, and James Krause versus Jorge Masvidal. And it's both these guys, to be honest, are both really climbing up the ranks of lightweight. Stephen Thompson versus Cote, good, solid fight. Thompson, despite still being 31, is still developing. Ebersole versus Howard, just an average for, both mid-level guys. Not a great fight, but not a bad fight. The main card, just every fight here is divisionally relevant. Every fight here could determine the next title challenger. If Zingano wins, she can be the next title challenger. McGregor wins, he can be the next title challenger. Alvarez versus Cerrone, and that's a big fight. Cerrone's on a big win streak. Romero versus Cody, maybe not a #1 contender fight, but definitely, one more win. The winner of this, one more win away from a title shot. And I guess then you got the main event, flyweight title fight. Honestly, the real main event is probably either Alvarez, Cerrone. It looks like they're pushing McGregor versus Poirier. That's like the real main event. Johnson versus Cariaso is just like there for a lot of people. I don't think not many people know who Cariaso is. Not many people that even know who he is think he'll win. So, but it is for a UFC title nonetheless, so it is important. Let's get started. On the main card, Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson fights Chris Cariaso. Cariaso has a 17-5 record, 3 wins by KO or TKO, 2 wins by sub. He also has 2 losses by submission. He's 33 years old on a 3-fight win streak. One thing I would say about Chris Cariaso, the guy is game. I mean, you can actually see his fight against Michael McDonald at 135. He loses, but he was in the fight the whole time. I think he's fought Barao. I think he got finished. He's doing really well against Moraga, actually, and then he got finished by a guillotine. He was competitive with Formiga. Formiga could take him down, but he can't really do much else with it. And that's the thing with Cariaso. His good cardio. His Muay Thai is solid. I mean, he beat Smolka, outstruck Smolka, was hitting what Florian was calling ninja chokes on him, and then he beat up I think he TKO'd Elior Santos. Who else? I forgot who else he beat though. His Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game is actually pretty solid. Even when he's on his back, his guard is relatively hard to pass. Even in the Mizugaki fight, I didn't think he should have got the win. But he's got a tricky guard too, so very game, very tricky fighter. Demetrious Johnson, 20-2 record with 1 draw, 4 wins by KO or TKO, 7 wins by sub. 28 years old on a 6-fight win streak. Trains out of AMC Pancration with Matt Hume, or under Matt Hume. He is a UFC flyweight champion. He's very quick and agile. Strong technical kickboxing. He uses combinations. He's good into clinch. He showed really strong knees in the clinch when he fought Ali Bagitunov. His cardio is strong. He always goes 5 rounds. His wrestling, both in offensive wrestling. I mean, this guy was doing football tackles. style tackles on John Moraga. His takedown defense is really strong. His ability to get back to his feet when he's taken down is very strong. His Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is good. He actually subbed Moraga. And he's good at making mid-fight adjustments. If you watch like the Dodson fight, among others, he'll make mid-fight adjustments. So, pound for pound, as far as like as far as technical prowess goes, speed and whatever, Johnson might actually be up there. I'm not talking resume, not talking resume at all. Just for pound skill in MMA, I'd say Demetrious Johnson's pretty high up there, to be perfectly honest with you. He's elite in a lot of areas of MMA. That's the thing, and he keeps getting better. So with that said, Demetrious Johnson for the win here. I will say this though, like I said, Cariaso is just a really game opponent. I think he'll lose. He's not the type that's going to take a round from Johnson, I don't think. But I think he'll have competitive rounds with Johnson. Could get finished, but I don't know. Tough to say if he'll get finished. Quite honestly, I can't really see Cariaso get finished for some reason. Not to say it's outside the realm of possibility or anything. It just, I know that Cariaso has fought tough competition and has fought tough fights against competition despite losing. So, yeah, Demetrious Johnson for the win, but I can see a competitive fight there. Next fight after that, Eddie Alvarez makes his UFC debut as he fights Donald Cowboy Cerrone. Cerrone has a 24-6 record with 1 no contest, 4 wins by KO or TKO, 15 wins by sub. He's 31 years old, on a 4-fight win streak, training out of Jackson Winklejohn. He's got some really strong Muay Thai, good kicks to the leg and to the head and body even. His knees are really good. He has a really good step-in knee to the body. That's excellent. He's got a strong chin. It's really strong Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, both on top and off of his back. You go for triangles, omoplatas even. I remember against Chris Hordeski, or Decky, he went for like triangle omoplata armbar, and he used that sequence really well on him. And his takedown defense, ever since like the WEC, has been greatly improving. That's one of the strongest parts of his game. And it's actually improved a lot. Just his overall wrestling. And even his offensive takedown ability is a lot better these days. Eddie Alvarez, 25-3 record. 14 wins by KO or TKO. 7 wins by sub. He also has 2 losses by submission. 30 years old on a 3-fight win streak. Trains out the Black Zillions. It is his first fight in the UFC. He is a former Bellator lightweight champion. Technically, he never lost it though, He uses a lot of movement. That's one thing that I really liked actually in the second Chandler fight. One of the improvements he's made was the use of lateral movement. So it's something he always used, but it looks like it was a higher focus in the second Chandler fight. Super resilient guy. His boxing is strong. He'll throw combinations. He'll throw to the body. His cardio is really good. He can go 5 rounds and has gone 5 rounds. He's a strong wrestler, both offensively and defensively. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills are solid. I think he was actually, earlier in his career, he was actually something more of a grappler than a striker. One of his problems, though, is his stand-up defense is terrible. And I say it on like all of Eddie Alvarez's fights. But it's the truth. He gets against anyone with like good striking, he gets dropped. I mean, he got dropped against Patricky Pitbull. Michael Chandler's dropped him. Oh, jeez. Roger Huerta dropped him. I want to say he got dropped in the Kawajiri fight. So that's the thing with Alvarez. He does get hit clean. He does get dropped in his fights. He primarily boxes, but like even against Patricky Pitbull, head kick finish, Cerrone, though, isn't the most defensively sound fighter as well. I don't think he gets dropped as much as Alvarez. I think he's a little more reliable. But even against like Adriano Martins, Edson Barboza, this was a guy that was getting lit up on the feet. He still has some pretty bad first rounds, even when he wins in the first round. He gets lit up on the feet, gets hit clean, but then manages to get the finish nonetheless. But you know, it's not a great sign, especially fighting like an elite guy like Eddie Alvarez. But that's not to say that Cerrone can't drop Eddie Alvarez. I think he has a little more tools to do it as well. So this one's hard for me to call because sometimes Cerrone can slow start. So that's pretty bad on Cerrone's part. What else? I did like Donald Cerrone's last win against Jim Miller. That was a pretty strong win. He's kind of got a history of losing to only like very top guys. So that's the thing too. Nate Diaz, Benson Henderson, Rafael dos Anjos, Anthony Pettis. He loses to those very top guys. He's like top 5. Well, Dos Anjos during that time wasn't top 5, but you know now he is. You know he had that ability. You know. So this fight really is going to show you where Eddie Alvarez is as far as the upper echelon of the lightweight division. You know, is he the type that beats Donald Cerrone? Most of those guys become title challengers, actually. Yeah, actually, most of them. I think Dos Anjos is the only guy that didn't challenge for the title after beating Cerrone, if I'm not mistaken. I know Benson Henderson beat him back in the WEC. I'm talking more UFC right now. So yeah, this one's hard for me to call. There's a lot of hype around Eddie Alvarez because I feel he is an elite fighter. He's going into the UFC. I think Alvarez can beat a lot of top 10 lightweights though. I'm actually going to go with Cerrone though. I think there's a little more diversity in his stand-up game. It does worry me that Eddie Alvarez does get dropped in a good amount of his fights. It also worries me that Cerrone does take some pretty clean hits against a lot of opponents that he fights as well. So it's not exactly, they're both pretty hittable. Wrestling wise, I'd say Alvarez probably has the advantage just in offensive wrestling. So he could win there. So that it's really hard to say how it goes. A lot of these fights are just like, well, you know, flip a coin. I'm kind of going with Cerrone, though. He's also fought in the UFC a bunch of times. And like I said, he only tends to lose to the very top guys, like the top 5 guys. This will kind of show us, or else a guy that was, and Dos Anjos, that was well on his way to the top 5. So yeah, like I said, this is going to show us where Eddie Alvarez is. I'm hesitant to pick Cerrone, but I can't help but feel that the range game works to Cerrone's advantage. I feel that he's a good enough grappler and a good enough defensive wrestler to defend some of his takedowns. Very active off his back as well. I can see Cerrone dropping Alvarez. And one thing about Cerrone too, you saw this against like Edson Barboza. I mean, this guy is one of the most opportunistic fighters. When he drops someone, I mean, after that he tries to finish them. You know, he dropped Barboza with a jab, rear naked choke right after that. I mean, this guy, he's, like I said, very opportunistic. So if he drops Alvarez, he's going for the finish. Donald Cerrone for the win. Tough one to call. just to tell you, I mean, just looking down this card, I want to say like every fight here is a tough one to call. Yeah, actually, I'm not kidding. I'm even talking about the Fight Pass prelims. You know, like I see avenues for everyone to win here. That's the thing. Like all of these fighters, they have avenues to win. No safe bets here, except probably Johnson, Cariaso. Otherwise, yeah, this is a tough one to call. Just a tough fight card to call. Next fight after that, Conor McGregor fights Dustin Poirier. Well, McGregor has a 15-2 record, 13 wins by KO or TKO, 1 win by sub. Has his 2 losses by submission. 26 years old, 11-fight win streak. Trains out of SBG Ireland with the likes of Cathal Pendred, Patrick Holohan. I know Gunnar Nelson will sometimes fight out of there sometimes too. Azing Daly, if I'm not mistaken, fights out of there. So a lot of high like it's actually a gym that's really picking up some steam. It has some really unorthodox stand-up actually, but some good boxing and some good combinations. What's the Max Holloway fight? I'm gonna get guys going for like front kicks. It's a really odd stance, like an Irish boxing stance. Actually, it's very unusual for an MMA fighter. Actually, one thing I like about McGregor though is he's very accurate with his strikes. So in the Marcus Brimage fight, you can see in the Diego Brando fight, he's very accurate there. His grappling, so far so good, really. He went for offensive takedowns against Max Holloway, which is good. He was put on his back briefly against Diego Brando. I would, you know, so far so good. It's still an area that probably needs the most testing, though, as his 2 losses are by submission. Dustin Poirier, 16-3 record, 7 wins by KO or TKO, 6 wins by sub, 25 years old, 3-fight win streak, training out of ATT. Poirier, man, super aggressive guy, always pushing forward. He has some good kickboxing. Actually has some really strong Brazilian jiu-jitsu skills though. Very underrated. The guy is really underrated on the ground. It's a good Darce choke. And just really good there. When he fought Holloway, he had that triangle armbar, of course. His stand-up defense sucks, though, man. I mean, Akira Kurosawa was blasting. And I think dropped him or wobbled him. Yeah, Poirier notoriously, McGregor's nickname is Notorious. Just has really bad stand-up defense. That's the thing. There's a lot of hype. I'll say this about McGregor in just about every fight now. There's a lot of hype around Conor McGregor. When picking Conor McGregor or not picking him, trying to erase the hype, look at his skills, you know? Obviously, you know, the guys he's beaten, the Max Holloway win, actually, in hindsight's a pretty strong win, actually. But of course, Poirier is actually beating Max Holloway as well. Poirier is also beating Diego Brando. So, actually, you know, I know Poirier is actually up there in the rankings, but he's actually lost against the guys up there, like Korean Zombie, Cub Swanson. I think his best win might actually be against, like, Eric Koch, if I'm not mistaken. I'm trying to think at featherweight, like, who his best win is. Because, like, I don't know if he has that, like, big top 10 win. Same with Conor McGregor. So, the thing is, like, if you actually look at the resumes, a lot of the more higher profile wins, whether it's like Brandao or like Holloway, are actually kind of similar, to be honest with you. I'm just trying to think who else besides Eric Koch did he beat that's like means something. And even Eric Koch might actually just be more of a mid-level guy in hindsight. Yeah, he beat Jonathan Brookins, I remember that. But he was also getting hit clean a lot by Jonathan Brookins. That was another fight that kind of showed his weak stand-up defense. So resume-wise, I know Poirier's fought guys like Korean Zombie and Cub Swanson, but he hasn't beaten them. Conor McGregor hasn't really fought guys up there. That's a thing too. So looking skill-wise, I'm actually going to go with Conor McGregor. I think that he's the more accurate puncher. Like I said, I like what I see out of McGregor's stand-up. I think his fist will find Poirier's face. On the ground, I'll favor Poirier. I don't know if he has the ability really to take it there. It's definitely something that he should work on the fight. You know, test his ground game. I know Poirier, like I said, pretty good on the ground. Close fight, but I gotta go with McGregor. Like I said, I think McGregor can exploit Dustin Poirier's relatively weak stand-up defense. Next fight after that, Tim Kennedy fights Yoel Romero. Kennedy has an 18-4 record, 6 wins by KO or TKO, 8 wins by sub, 35 years old, on a 4-fight win streak, training out of Jackson Winklejohn. The thing about Kennedy, really game opponent. He's always in their face. Super resilient about getting takedowns. He has strong top control. The Michael Bisping fight was a really good example of a guy that, because Michael Bisping's really good about getting off of his back when he's taken down. Kennedy managed to actually mount him multiple times and keep top control against a guy that's notoriously hard to do against. He's a good scrambler too, actually. You can watch the Trevor Smith fight. She had really good scrambling abilities. Stand-up's solid. It's not spectacular or anything like that. It's Kennedy's stand-ups is closer to the average side. It's not great, but it's not like a liability either. It's above serviceable. I'd say it's just good. And Kennedy's cardio is good. He's gone 5 rounds with the likes of Jacare, Luke Rockhold, and Michael Bisping. Yoel Romero, 8-1 record, 7 wins by KO or TKO, 1 win by decision, 37 years old, on a 4-fight win streak, training out of ATT. He is big for 185. The guy is massive. He has Olympic level wrestling. I will say this though, there's asterisks there, because the thing is, he hasn't really always shown to be the greatest wrestler against the likes of Honey March or Derek Brunson. Derek Brunson and March both managed to take him down. That's a pretty bad warning sign. However, when he fought Brad Tavares, you actually saw a lot more of Romero's offensive wrestling ability and overall wrestling ability. So that was a really good sign for Romero. But sometimes it looks like his wrestling's like slipping, to be honest with you. But it's good to see that he was utilizing it against Brad Tavares. Super heavy-handed guy too. This guy hits really hard. He's got some strong boxing. He has a very interesting fight style because he's always changing his tempo. He'll be all lackadaisical, and all of a sudden he'll be all intense, you know. And he goes back to lackadaisical. A lot of people actually catch him there when he changes his tempo, though. Sometimes he'll be too lackadaisical, and then some guys will get the better of him because of that. Man, this one's hard for me to call. One thing is, I can actually see Tim Kennedy. If Honey Marks and Derek Brunson have managed to take down Yoel Romero, I can actually see Tim Kennedy taking down Yoel Romero. But like I said, the Brad Tavares fight was was positive as far as the wrestling goes. And the stand up, I mean, Kennedy's good. I'd say Yoel Romero at least at least for as far as power goes, Romero should be superior there. So this is a really interesting fight because, like, this will also show if Yoel Romero's a top fighter or not, a top middleweight. A lot of people feel he's there already, but I think he needs that. This will be like that signature win, whether he is or not. Tim Kennedy, Bisping's like his biggest win. Isn't the pretty good win, to be honest with you. Whether you hate Bisping or like the guy, he is actually a pretty solid fighter. Tough one for me to call. I'm gonna go with Yoel Romero. I think, especially if he's more aware of the wrestling, of his own wrestling, like his own use of offensive takedowns and takedown defense, he should be good. I think he wins in the stand-up. Yoel Romero for the win here, but man, tough one for me to call. Really tough. All these fights are tough ones for me to call. Okay, the final fight of the main card, we have Amanda Lioness Nunes versus Cat Alpha Zingano. Well, Zingano, 8-0 undefeated record, 4 wins by KO or TKO, 3 wins by sub, 32 years old. She last fought in April 2013. As you saw in the Miesha Tate fight, she does have good Muay Thai, some really good knees. Actually, in a lot of her fights before the Tate fight, though, if you watch like her fight against Raquel Pending or some of her other fights, she's actually more of a grappler. I believe she did a tournament not too long ago, and there's a flying armbar that she did on an opponent. But yeah, she's actually a good wrestler and has some solid Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills. Doesn't always show it though. Man. But like I said, long layoff, April 2013, and she's coming off a knee injury. So that's don't really know how Zingano's gonna look. Nunes, it's 9-3 record, 8 wins by KO or TKO, 1 win by sub. She's 26 years old on a 2-fight win streak. Trains on MMA Masters with the likes of Luis Palomino, Josh Saman, and a couple others. She's got some strong boxing, some really heavy hands. Saw that in the Julia Budd fight back in Strikeforce Challengers. Her grappling's actually improving. She actually took down Shayla Gaff and ground and pounded her. And then she took down Germaine de Randami and finished her also with ground and pound from the mount. She has shown to be relatively weak off her back though. Sarah DeLelio actually took her down almost at will, and Nunes couldn't really do much off her back against her. And Nunes is actually a brown belt in Jiu-Jitsu, if I'm not mistaken, in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. There's another fight too where Nunes were put on. I want to say against Alexis Davis too. That's what happened. Kind of forgot how that fight went. I know it ended on the ground though. I think it was like ground and pound, right? If I'm not mistaken. So yeah, that's the thing with Nunes. She has shown susceptible to getting taken down and controlled in past fights. This fight's hard for me to call because you got someone off a long layoff. She has Zingano has a really good win over Miesha Tate. It has to be said though, those first 2 rounds, that was all Miesha Tate, if I'm not mistaken. It wasn't until Zingano really rallied back in that 3rd round that she got the win, but she was actually on her way to losing. With that said, I think Zingano might be the more well-rounded fighter. But Nunes has some really strong boxing that Zingano's got to watch out for. Zingano might be wise to utilize her wrestling in this fight, which I can see her doing actually. I'm going to go with Cat Zingano to win this one, especially if she uses her wrestling. Still a bit iffy though, when the last time he fought is April 2013. That's a pretty long layoff. Knee, coming off like knee surgery too. You know, not the best. On to prelims on Fox Sports 1. Speaking of guys coming off knee surgeries or knee injuries, Dominick Cruz fights Takeya Mizugaki. Dominick Cruz, 19-1 record, 6 wins by KO or TKO, 1 win by sub, 29 years old, 10-fight win streak, training out of Alliance. He last fought in October 2011. I want to say it was against Faber. Yeah, that was a good fight too. He is the former UFC bantamweight champion. He never actually lost the title. He was just so inactive that they officially stripped him of the title. And now Dillashaw is now the champion. Cruz's style is predicated on movement. It's very much an alliance style of fighting, using a lot of movement with combinations, not always more volume than power a lot of times. He is a good kickboxer, really strong wrestler as well. Someone was telling me like he has a really good reap, if I'm not mistaken. That's what I was told, as far as the name of his offensive takedown. His top control is really good as well, and he's a strong scrambler. Takeya Mizugaki, 20-7 record with 2 draws, 5 wins by KO or TKO, 1 win by sub. He's 30 years old on a 5-fight win streak. He's got some good wins over Brian Caraway in there. Beat like Eric Perez. Who else? I forget who else is on that streak, but I think Caraway is probably the best win in that streak, if I'm not mistaken. Did he beat Francisco Rivera? I forget. I think he did. The thing with Mizugaki, he's a good boxer with some really underrated grappling. He has a good clinch takedown, and his ground and pound is actually pretty solid. His takedown defense is actually not too bad. It's not the strongest part of his game, but you know, he doesn't get taken down at will as well. This is an interesting fight just because Mizugaki could be play the spoiler. He is a good, solid fighter. You know, I'd say top 10. You know, legit top 10 guy. You know, well-rounded enough. Good. Mainly his boxing is one of is like the strongest point of his game. And the thing with Cruz, if you know he went through a double knee surgery, or you know. It's crazy surgeries, you know, and he has this long layoff. And for a guy that uses a lot of movement, I don't know how that layoff's going to affect him. At his best, Cruz should be able to use his movement to avoid some of the. Mizugaki actually throws a good amount of power shots. He has a good lead right, if I'm not mistaken. You know, Mizugaki's not like a jabber and a guy that throws a lot of jabs. He throws a lot of power strikes. So I can see at Cruz at his best, utilizing movement to avoid those power shots, maybe mix in his wrestling as well, and get the win over Mizugaki. So I'm going to go with Dominick Cruz for the win there. That's saying whether he's back on form or not, though. You just never know. Next fight after that, the James Krause fights Jorge Masvidal. James Krause, 21-5 record, 6 wins by KO or TKO, 13 wins by sub. He also has 2 losses by submission. 28 years old. It's really tall for a lightweight, actually. He's 6'2", as opposed to Masvidal, who's 5'11". He was actually not that short for the weight class himself. Krause trains at a K2L Grindhouse. I know like Sharkbait trains out of there. Lorsanko. Who else? There's some other good fighters out of K2L. One thing about Krause is he utilizes range really well with straight punches, and he has a really good head kick. It's really quick, and he's actually won a good amount of fights utilizing the head kick. His Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu skills are also very solid. Masvidal, 27-8 record, 10 wins by KO or TKO, 2 wins by sub. That says 2 losses by submission. 29 years old. Like I said, he's 5'11". He's on a 2-fight win streak, most recently beating Darren Cruikshank. Trains out of ATT. Masvidal, strong takedown defense. This guy is one of the hardest guys to take down, and his counter wrestling is really good. When you take the guy down, he springs right back to his feet. I mean, he's so hard to keep down. He's got a really strong chin too. Actually, in the first round of the Cruikshank fight, he got dropped pretty hard and just got back up. I mean, he's a guy that he'll get dropped. He got dropped by Michael Chiesa of all guys, and sometimes that actually wakes him up. He's also a good kickboxer as well. That's one of the problems with Masvidal. He can get really lackadaisical in the cage. It's definitely to his detriment too. I think with Masvidal also, he's really underrated as far as an offensive wrestler. And his overall Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game is actually pretty solid. Like, it's really underrated, his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game. He did submit Michael Chiesa, which, Chiesa's game is mainly on the ground. So, with that said, this one's hard for me to call. James Krause, he's, like I said, he's a solid fighter. I remember back in the WEC, I didn't really think much of the guy. When he was fighting in the regionals, he was actually just doing really well in the regional scene. When he came into the UFC, he looked pretty good. Like I said, he uses the range well. And I think that might give Jorge Masvidal some problems, actually, with the range. I think Masvidal might actually incorporate some offensive takedowns in this fight. I'm hoping Masvidal can, because I'm going to pick Masvidal to win this one. I hope Masvidal can get inside. If not, hope he can get inside using offensive takedowns as well. Krause, though, really good fighter. Definitely a guy that's coming up that not a lot of people are... kind of like a dark horse prospect in the division, kind of. Masvidal, though, he's got some good momentum as well. Skill-wise, it's really hard to say who's going to win this fight. Both of them are pretty well skilled. I can't see Krause taking down Masvidal or holding him down, but I could actually see Masvidal possibly taking down Krause. In the stand-up, I can see Krause utilizing his range pretty well, actually, against Masvidal. So that might make it kind of tough on Masvidal as well. Nonetheless, I'll go with Jorge Masvidal. Tough one for me to call, though. Next fight after that, Patrick Cote fights Stephen Thompson. Thompson has a 9-1 record, 5 wins by KO or TKO, 1 win by sub. He's 31 years old on a 3-fight win streak. He has a karate-style stand-up with some really strong kicks. One thing I noticed about these guys with traditional martial arts backgrounds, though, is they're very accurate with their striking. And Stephen Thompson's no exception. Not with just kicks. His punches are actually very accurate as well. I want to say he beat Chris Clements with strikes, with punches, if I'm not mistaken. His takedown defense, too, has actually been improving. And his overall just grappling game, he actually sees Thompson going for offensive takedowns, has also been improving as well. Patrick Cote, 20-8 record, 8 wins by KO or TKO, 3 wins by sub. He also has 3 losses by submission. 34 years old on a 3-fight win streak. He has good kickboxing, but some bad defense. Cote is using his grappling a lot more. His last fight against Kyle Noak, I mean, he pretty much just grinded out a victory. I gotta say with Cote too, his chin, I mean, that guy used to have an iron chin. It is deteriorating at a steady clip. You can see it in the Kyle Noak fight. Alessio Sakara. was, if he didn't hit the back of Cote's head, he probably would have won. A lot of guys have been able to crack Cote's chin these days. It's definitely deteriorating. Heck, I don't even think Patrick Cote should have got that win over Bobby Volker, to be perfectly honest with you. And he barely beat Kyle Noak. I mean, if Noak has terrible takedown defense. I gotta go with Stephen Thompson to win this one. I think he's a more accurate striker, and he's improving his overall grappling ability, where I don't think he'll get taken down as much. And he should be able to beat Cote up on his feet. Next, right after that, Brian Ebersole fights John Howard. Howard has a 22-9 record, 9 wins by KO TKO, 6 wins by sub, has his 2 losses by KO TKO. He has some good stand-up, heavy-handed guy. His grappling just average, Howard's is. He's not like, it's probably the weakest part of his game for sure. But, he's not an absolute liability. That's probably where you'd want to take the fight with John Howard, though. He shouldn't actually have a good chin. His cardio is a bit questionable, though. Howard, when he fought Sayar Bahadazara, I mean, man, both those guys look gassed out. Ebersole, 50-16 record with 1 draw and 1 no contest. 14 wins by KO TKO, 20 wins by sub. He also has 9 losses by submission. 33 years old. He's on a 2-fight losing streak. I want to say he lost to Rick Story last time out. Has some really unorthodox stand-up. He'll punch the thigh. He'll go for cartwheel kicks and whatnot. But he's actually a pretty good wrestler and actually has some good ground and pound. I remember the Dennis Hallman fight. One with good ground and pound, actually. He'll kind of put himself in bad positions as far as some submissions go. But yeah, this one's actually really hard for me to call too, because I can see Howard also just beating up Brian Ebersole on the feet. I'm going with Ebersole to win this one. I think he'll be able to take Howard down, maybe grind him against the fence a lot of times as well. On the feet, I give the advantage to Howard, and the grappling, I'll give the advantage to Ebersole. Gonna go with Ebersole for a win there. Okay, on the prelims, we have Kevin Lee versus Jon Tuck. Jon Tuck, 8-1 record, 3 wins by KO or TKO, 4 wins by sub. 30 years old, training out of MMA Lab with the likes of Benson Henderson and Alex Caceres. Tuck actually has some good stand-up. His Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu game's not too bad. Won his last fight against Jake Lindsay by taking his back and giving him a bunch of these weird kicks to the ribs that ended up winning him the fight. Kevin Lee, 8-1 record, 4 wins by sub, 4 wins by decision. 22 years old. Most recently beating Jesse Ronson, actually. Real athletic guy. Good wrestler. His stand-up's also improving. I like what I see out of his boxing. But I really like his wrestling. Both of these guys are prospects, but I think Kevin Lee is definitely the one with the higher ceiling here. Jon Tuck has been he's not the best prospect or anything like that. Gotta go with Kevin Lee. I think he's, like I said, the superior wrestler. Might even have the superior striking at this point. Even against Ally Quinto, Kevin Lee did not look that bad. So yeah, I'll go with Kevin Lee for the win here. He's actually a prospect that I'm pretty high on. And finally, Manny Gamburyan fights Cody Gibson. Okay, Manny Gamburyan, 13-8 record with 1 no contest, 2 wins by KO or TKO, 6 wins by sub. He has 2 losses by KO or TKO, 33 years old. Trains out of Team Hyaston / the Galendo Fighting Club with the likes of Ronda Rousey. It'll be his first cut to 135 pounds. He does have some strong judo skills with some good top control. Stand-up's average, but he does have heavy hands. Cody Gibson, 12-4 record, 5 wins by KO or TKO, 3 wins by sub. Has 2 losses by submission, 27 years old. Trains out of Elite Team with the likes of Doug Marshall. He lost his first fight in the UFC against Aljamain Sterling, but he looked really good there. He actually showed some pretty good wrestling in that fight. And then most recently, he just knocked out Johnny Bedford. So stand-up's not too bad either. It's actually, like, Gamburyan is where he's at. This guy probably isn't going to improve too much. Gibson, still a prospect. So this is definitely a good test for a prospect here. I'm going to go with Cody Gibson. I think he passes the test. Like I said, I like what I see out of his stand-up. He's a good wrestler as well. Cody Gibson for the win there. Okay, to recap on the main card, I have Demetrious Johnson over Chris Cariaso. Cerrone beating Eddie Alvarez. Conor McGregor over Dustin Poirier. Yoel Romero over Tim Kennedy. And Kat Zingano beating Amanda Nunes. On the Fox Sports 1 prelims, I have Dominick Cruz over Takeya Mizugaki. Jorge Masvidal over James Krause. Stephen Thompson beating Patrick Cote. And Brian Ebersole over John Howard. On the Fight Pass prelims, I have Kevin Lee over Jon Tuck. And Cody Gibson beating Manny Gamburyan. So that's it for my predictions for UFC 178 Johnson versus Cariaso. If you have any comments, just leave them below. And that's it for MMA for you. Thank you guys very much.